Today I would like to talk about seeking validation and approval, the way that we create a self-image and how we are attached to the certain identities and self-images that we create, and the obstacles in letting that go. Now, this is a process that I'm currently in right now, and it's a process that I feel like I'm always in, trying to let go of my identifications, but it's not as easy as it sounds, because when we grow up, we start to shape certain ideas and beliefs about ourselves and cultivate certain strategies that help us get love and help us get approval. And these are the types of masks that we wear externally to others, and actually also towards ourselves, that make us feel like we are a good person, make us feel worthy, make us feel like we belong. Now, when you start realizing that you are lying to yourself and you are lying to other people, this is a very, actually, for myself, like a lot of grief comes up, because I feel as though whatever ideas I have about myself are a facade, and they are something that is obstructing me from my true essence. But then I get lost, because I'm like, okay, if I'm not this, then what am I? And within my own spiritual practice, it's about dropping the identifications and coming into a state of beingness. But at the same time, we do have ego, and we do exist within the world, and there is nothing wrong with ego. It's just how we use our ego, which is usually the problem. So a lot of the time on more of a spiritual path, people start to demonize the ego. But we want to have a strong, robust, flexible and healthy ego in order to serve and relate to other people. So this process of letting go of the attachments to our identifications requires you to first look at what your identifications are, look at what your masks are. And this is a lot about owning your shadow. I was in a relationship over the past 4 years with a man who revealed a lot of my shadow and put it in front of my face. And I fought so hard against that. I did not want to believe anything that he said. And I would defend so much against the truth that was being told about myself, that it got to a point where it created so much lack of intimacy and disconnection from myself and my partner, that eventually this created separation. And it's interesting to be on the other side of this experience and start to see from my own perspective how attached I was to the ideas that I had about myself, the ideas that I had about my femininity, the ideas that I had about who I should be as a woman, and I can still see that I'm holding on to those ideas. When we start to consciously choose to give up the attachment of our identifications, there is a lot of reorganization that happens. Now, with myself and my personal story, it's been a lot around my femininity, my sensuality, my sexuality, how I relate to men. And this has been coming from experiences of receiving lustful energy from men since puberty, since like 11, 12, 13 years old, of having this feeling of lustful energy projected upon me, and then in turn projecting that outwards, because this is how I started to recognize I was getting noticed by men and getting appreciated and validated by men. And also growing up and feeling a sense of lustful energy also from my father, which is quite unconscious on his end. He's just a man who has a lot of sexual energy as well, and I could feel this. So even from a little girl, feeling this energy and being confused around the fact that this is how I get love. And it wasn't so much related to the act of sex, but more feeling desired from men. Now, this has been really interesting for me to work on letting go of the idea that I need to have that type of approval and validation in order to have a sense of self as a woman. And I see how I actually manipulate and seduce men in very, very subtle ways to get that validation and that feeling of worth. So at the moment, what I'm trying to do is recognize when that's happening and start to let that go. And I don't want to. I don't want to fucking let that go because I'm afraid of not being seen and not being recognized and not being loved. And it's really scary to start to let go of these images that we have of ourselves and start to recognize that we are lovable regardless of these masks that we wear. And I invite you to look the way that you seduce, the way that you seek validation and approval, the way that you get recognized. And it might be very subtle or it might be extremely large. It might be in your savior role, in the perfect girl, in the helper, look, even in the victim, or in the teacher, the therapist role, which is also myself, and the jokester, the musician, like whatever your role you're putting on, consciously or unconsciously, check who you would be without that mask, without that role. Who is underneath that? And do you believe that person is worthy of love without the identifications that you're projecting outwards and towards yourself? And this is the question that is constantly being brought to me is, am I lovable just for who I am? And then who am I without all of my masks, all of my identifications? And the way that I have been able to test this within myself is simply sharing my thoughts and feelings and my vulnerabilities of what's going on inside of me, what's happening in each moment, and just starting to reveal myself and be honest about what's happening. The other day I noticed that I was controlling a situation with a man, and because I had fears inside of me. And I went up to him and I said, look, I was testing you. I was testing whether or not I could trust you. I was testing whether or not you were with me, that you were by my side. And I saw how I was controlling a situation just to test this person, because inside of me I was fearing some kind of rejection and competition with another woman. And it felt really liberating to own this within myself rather than wearing this mask that was a strong woman who has things under control, when really it was the complete opposite. And then using my sensuality and sexuality to actually even more control that situation and get a grasp on this person that I care for. And it was really liberating for me to own that, and also then to see my pretentiousness and my feeling of, oh, look how good I am for being so honest. And this was hilarious to also see myself, that I was priding myself on being honest about how I was feeling. So it's always a bit of a mind game, but just to see myself and also laugh at the way that I am even using my vulnerability as a source of control and power. And being okay with that, and loving myself even more for those parts of me, because I'm a human. We're all human. And it's just about learning to love the full spectrum of our purity and our impurities, our light and our dark together, and coming to a space of centeredness where we can just rest and be in ourself, whatever end of the spectrum we're expressing. And this is something that I'm coming more and more into a space of liberation about within myself, of just learning to laugh at this funny self, at this funny ego, and celebrating the true vulnerability and authenticities that can also come through in a space of intimacy with friends, with lovers, with teachers, with our families, and try as much as we can to share ourselves. And come back into a space of where we were at the beginning, which is this childlike innocence where everything is new and we're curious and we're open and receptive to what is coming to us in each moment. and letting go of trying to maintain this image of approval and validation, and letting go of this trance of unworthiness, and start to just love yourself, love your darkness, love your light, and be free in all of that together, rather than trying to fight against who we are in any moment.